against the waiter that didn't bring our check fast enough, be it against the person that cuts in front of us in traffic, or be it against someone that's really harmed us deeply. Those kind of judgments and resentments and unforgivenesses tie us down, and our balloon will not take off, friends. We will not make it to Easter, okay? We will not make it to that true resurrected experience, which is living like Jesus did, which is living in absolute forgiveness, because didn't he demonstrate that? So today we're going to be blessed. We're going to be talking about forgiveness, and we are going to have the opportunity to talk about forgiveness with someone who not only has lived it, but has written a book about it. Craig McAndrew is going to be joining me in just a moment, and I want to tell you about Craig McAndrew. Maybe you know a little bit about him because he's been a part of the church here since 1992. Craig McAndrew is he's a licensed counselor. And as a part of this ministry, he walked in the door in 1992 and stayed, as he says. And he has served on our board of directors. He has served as one of our morning meditation leaders. He has served as a teacher here of many different classes. His most popular are his meditation classes and his forgiveness classes. He's served in many ways in this ministry. And he has written this book, which is called Forgiving Judas, A Man's Journey to Forgive His Brother. You see, Craig has had a life-changing experience with forgiveness. And he's here to share about that with us today. So help me welcome Craig McAndrew. All right, thanks so much for being here, Craig.
Oh, my pleasure. This, as I said the other day, it's like, this is one of the things that I can talk for hours about, but I promise you I won't.
Yeah, well, so anyway, let's get going. I know you could because of the passion in your heart. And let's just start, I'd like to start at the very beginning, which is to ask you, tell us about the experience that changed your life, that really led to this journey of forgiveness.
Okay, well, it all goes back to, in 1985, I was a restaurant manager. I was closing the restaurant. It was this Sunday night between Christmas and New Year's, very busy time of the year. And this robber walked in through the back door, held us hostage, robbed the restaurant. At gunpoint, I said it was like looking down a cannon, when you have the gun right in your face. Make a long story short, as my duties was I was hitting the silent alarms, and the police actually came. There was a shootout. The only one hurt was the guy that robbed me. And he went to jail. I thought that was the end of the story. Well, apparently it wasn't, because I suffered from something called post-traumatic stress disorder, which, if anyone's familiar with that, there are symptoms like depression, a lot of anxiety, hallucinations, quite a few life-altering things.
Now, did you know that these symptoms were connected?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't, because I thought, well, why should I have these? He's in jail, there's no way he can harm me. But I still had these images of him somehow getting out and coming to hurt me in some way. So very much living in fear for quite some time. And I knew that I wanted to forgive him, but I figured there's plenty of time for that, So don't have to do it right now. And I think some of you can relate to that. And so 11 years later, in 1996, I received a phone call from an attorney that represented his family. Apparently, he was dying of cancer in prison, and his family was wanting him to die peacefully at home. And so the attorney was asking me if I'd be willing to write a letter to the warden saying it was okay with me if he was released from prison.
Okay, so this is 11 years later now, and you're trying to just forget that it ever happened, I presume.
Yes.
Right. And the family wants you to write a letter to say it's okay that he be released from prison. This man that haunts your dreams.
Right.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah, and so that, again, that kind of brought up all of those symptoms again, of fear and anxiety. Well, I figured before I could even make that decision of writing a letter, I had to do my own forgiveness work, because I knew that that's the only way I could be clear about whether or not to write the letter. And so I did. I went camping had a conversation with God, and I asked God if I should forgive this guy. And the response I got was, it's up to you.
Wow. It's up to you.
Yeah, it's personal responsibility, free will,
Yeah.
as people say. So I said, well, have you forgiven him? God said, of course. And so my response was, well, who am I not? And so I had this image of the guy that, the robber, in my mind, and I just said, well, if God's not going to judge you, then I'm not either. I release you to your highest good. That was the only thing I needed to do at that moment. And it was, I'm still choked up with that. It was like a huge weight was just lifted off. I felt so free. I felt this incredible love. And I just felt like, wow, I still didn't know whether I was going to write a book or not, but I just felt like, wow, I'm free. The ties have been cut. And got home from camping, and the day after I got home, I picked up the newspaper and read, because the newspaper was following the story. He was dying of cancer. He had passed away just a few hours after I had done this process.
Wow. What a powerful story. What a powerful story. So how did you feel when you read that news in the newspaper, that the timing had been so precise? Now, what I'm hearing you say is, you released him in your heart. You released the tie that was uniting you in an unhealthy, negative, fearful way to him, and then his soul moved on.
Right.
Yeah, so how did you feel when you read that?
It was, it's so hard to describe because I thought I would feel some type of vindication, but it wasn't. It was more this compassion, this love for his family and for him, for what he suffered, and just this incredible love flowing through me that he's no longer suffering.
Wow. And so how did it change your life? What can you compare and contrast what your life before this moment and your life after this moment?
Oh, so many things have happened that I would have never imagined. The book is one of them. But my life has grown in so many ways, and I'm able to see things in a different light. I see. It's a reminder that we are all connected. And when I see, terrible atrocities that we'll see on the news, I see it with compassion for both sides of the story, because I know that the people committing these atrocities, they're suffering too. And the people who have the atrocities against them, they're suffering. And just that compassion for both of them.
Wow. Now, I know that this is not the case, but as I hear Craig tell the story, it sounds like you just made a decision and you did it. I mean, it sounds real easy, doesn't it? It sounds like you just, okay, I'm going to go off, I'm going to take a few minutes, I'm going to intend to forgive and be done.
It sounds easy, and looking back, it seems that way for me. And yet, I realized that it was a long process. And, as Patricia said, I'm a counselor, and so I work with a lot of people and with many issues. And a lot of times they say, I know I need to forgive, but I should do it now. And I'm like, it took me 11 years just for that one incident, and it was a process. There's a whole process involved. It's not automatic. It's not like flipping the switch.
Can you share anything about what you feel like the essential steps are to forgive?
Colin Tipping, who wrote the book Radical Forgiveness, and he has a whole theory around that. He says there's basically 4 steps. One is, he says, look what I created, I see, look at our connection with each other, just to affirm that connection with each other. that's the first step. The second step is to process the feelings. One of the important things with forgiveness is processing the feelings, and I did. I went and saw a counselor because I thought these things were unrelated to the event, and actually the counselors didn't make that connection either. But it was a way for me to process those feelings. The third step is to reframe it, to see it from a higher level. To really see it from a God. We are all beings of love, regardless of what it looks like on the outside. And then finally is just to reaffirm, the fourth step is to reaffirm that interconnectedness, our oneness with God, our oneness with each other.
So we talked last week, if you remember, we talked about this field that we're all a part of, and how, through scientific research even, it's been proven that our own DNA impacts the field, that there is this connection. And so I'm hearing that that's where you start with forgiveness. You start with affirming the oneness, affirming the interconnectedness, and really accepting and knowing that we are all one, even this individual that may have harmed us really greatly. And then after that, then we have time to process our feelings. Now, you went to a counselor, and other ways to do that might be
support groups. Supportive friends and family members. Journaling, we're both big believers in journaling.
Yes.
And also with the journaling, not just about what happened, but also the gratitude journal. Gratitude journals are so important. There's a technique where you actually write about the event 3 times, but with 3 to 4 days to a week between the events. So the first time you write down what happened and write it with feeling, write it with don't judge yourself that, this is, the spelling's wrong, there's punctuation, don't have any, because nobody's going to look at it.
Kind of just a free flow writing.
Free flow writing, absolutely. And then wait a few days to a week, do it again, wait a few days to a week, and by the third or fourth time, if it takes 4 times, that's fine, you will see that you are seeing it in a different light when you write it down. When you actually read what you've written, you're seeing it more from a loving and compassionate place.
I've heard that in addition to that, another way of writing that sort of story is to write it in the third person. Not the first time, because you want to get all those feelings out, but if you shift someone in the process to writing the story down or telling the story in the third person, it begins to come out a little differently too. So processing the feelings, then you, having done that, you're able to reframe the story. That's where that writing in the third person might be helpful. And then once again, at the end, you affirm your interconnectedness.
And if you really want to have fun, write it from the other person's perspective.
Yeah, that'd be a very effective tool.
Yeah.
So do you still have the dreams?
No, and every once in a while I'll have thoughts about this guy, and now I see him in such a different light. I see him as this beautiful spirit, this beautiful child of God, that he took on this role of, he had addiction problems, he had, legal problems, obviously. When he went to jail, it was supposed to be for the rest of his life, and it was. And I see that as how powerful the love he had, not just for me, but for humanity, that he took on that role to be a part of this.
To be a part of giving the gift that came to you.
Yes.
The lessons that you have learned from it.
And not just to me.
Right.
It goes out to everyone. And I was telling Patricia, it's like I just have this vision of how cool would it be? What would this world be like if everyone here, from hearing my story, if they chose to go out and forgive somebody today, and then each one of those people chose to forgive someone, and then each one of those people going out in ripples, what would this world be like?
That's a beautiful vision. Let's thank Craig for sharing today.